I mean, that would be the first one. Definitely like don't build until you validate, honestly. No question. What else? What other advice? I mean, cash flow positive is king. Um, period. Um, do something you really care about. Like, what are you passionate about? What problems do you face that you really want to solve? Like, that would be the last piece I'd say, is because I've seen a lot of people try building other companies. And I'm not here to say that what I'm building is going to work, going to succeed. I mean, time tells. I firmly believe that we will. But, obviously, again, you can't predict the future. And so what I'd say is that the thing that gets me out of bed and why I don't feel like I'm working is because I truly love what I do every single day, because it's all in an effort to solve a problem that I care about.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Ethan Berg. And Ethan started his journey being born and raised in Philadelphia. Went to college on scholarship, did a dual major in risk management and entrepreneurship. Dropped the risk management major in order to go and serve a bit of coffee. And then went into lean more into the entrepreneurship side more heavily. Graduated during COVID, was not a developer when he graduated, but went out and built a product that the market wasn't quite ready for. But after that failure, went to the current business where he's helping businesses build their minimally viable products with 3D printing. So, with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Ethan.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Excited to have you here. So, I just gave a quick intro or a quick walkthrough to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack that just a little bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started growing up in Philadelphia?
Yeah, and just for context, it's not just 3D printing. Like, I'd say it's definitely more related to the metaverse, XR, VR, AR type experiences. So I just wanted to allude to that. But yeah, I guess where it started at school, at college. You want me to go back further?
College is great.
All right, yeah, perfect. I started as a student at Temple University during my junior year. As you said, I'm not a developer at all. So on my end, it was, my journey at school was focus on entrepreneurship as well as risk management, as you said, right? And so ultimately, what I ended up discovering pretty quickly was that the classes in entrepreneurship were a lot more open, creative. They really pushed you to learn, to try, and to fail. And in other classes, it was a lot more closed off, where you had to stick to the curriculum, the syllabus, right? And not here to say there shouldn't be one, but I think that it wasn't flexible to any degree. And so, during finals and midterms week, during my earlier semesters at school, I ultimately realized the cafe closed in the tech center and library from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I was at Temple University. So for anyone that's pretty familiar with the area in North Philly, you can't really leave your stuff there. You'll never see it again. You get up, you'll lose your spot. It's midterms and finals, right? So everyone's looking for a seat. And even if you do get up and go get it, it's a 15-minute walk there and back. Plus, you're going to spend, $5-6 on the coffee anyway. And so really what I decided was that there was a huge gap because everyone liked coffee. Everyone was drinking it straight through the night and there weren't any options. And so I started trucking in a ton of that into the tech center to sell it to people instead of studying for risk management. My entrepreneurship professors understood. They seem to encourage that sort of stuff. And so again, like that's probably why I would say I left risk management and focused a lot more on entrepreneurship because again, they supported me with that. It was going well, and I really wanted to understand more about how could I do better at this, right? And so I would say like that was definitely a large part of that at the end of the day.
So
And
now you
then,
see you shifted focus. Okay, we're gonna less focus on risk management or like the entrepreneurship side more. Decided, hey, they're gonna try it out. Or serve coffee and take advantage of that opportunity as well. So you kind of went through that. Now as you're going through, I think you wrapped up college and were with the focus on entrepreneurship, kind of right as COVID hit. Is that right?
May 2020. So my last semester at school kind of got cut in half. Yeah, not, I'd say like that's definitely a part of the driver. I mean, ultimately, when I was at school, the first implementation was a VR shopping platform. So, for those that don't know, haven't tried VR, any of that, like even to date, there aren't really, you're not going to find a robust VR shopping or retail application yet. Because even at that time, let alone today, it's just not there yet. I think it's definitely getting closer, but at the time, it's essentially in-person shopping online, and you can do it with other people physically no matter where they are, right? And so that concept was definitely a bit far-fetched pre-COVID. People thought I was nuts. They were telling me I'm crazy, what am I thinking? But I really wanted to build it because I had friends that were and family that weren't necessarily near me, and that just happened to be one of the experiences that I commonly shared with many other people, regardless of what group, friend, family, or colleague, right? And so I decided that could be a cool experience to create, that we could then do something together, like instead of FaceTiming, and FaceTime only does so much. You can't do anything together. You're kind of staring at each other. You know what I mean? Like I'd say the closest is video games at the end of the day, but those aren't real. For those that don't play video games, you're not going to get them to hop into a Madden or a Call of Duty match with you. It's just not, realistic. And so for me, it was, well, how do we create something that feels real, that someone would be willing to actually share with me, in a similar type experience to that of gaming? And that's kind of what drove me to entering into the VR space.
So now you enter into that space, and I think you started the business there, and you kind of alluded to it, the market wasn't quite ready for it, or the product didn't quite take off as well. How long did you spend on that business? Kind of walk us through just a little bit as to how that evolved and how you arrived at the decision. Okay, maybe it's not the right timing here.
Yeah, I spent over a year, give or take, building it. I spent my own money that I was making from the coffee venture as well to hiring a team. Again, there were the big learnings. I guess there were a few big learnings out of it. Number one was I didn't validate before I built it, like which again, not an easy thing to do, because VR and 3D is very, you need to see it and try it before you get it. It's not something you can tell someone and they wrap their head fully around what it means, right? And so, in that context, there was no tools that let me do it. Nothing let me try to create it and validate it before going and fully building a solution like that. Number two was people don't have VR yet. I built it for friends and family on a device that people didn't have access to. So obviously that was pretty critical. There's more of a mass market now today, a lot more adoption, but it's still not at the critical mass yet, where you're going to look at, everyone in a room and a majority will have it. It's just, only certain rooms you're going to find that in. And so that was definitely the case back then. Number three was people wanted to do more than shop, like, retail. What I found was that the end goal is make more money for the brand,
Hmm.
but the sale itself, everything leading up to it is anything except for shopping. It's picking it up, it's trying it on, it's throwing it at the wall, it's tossing it to a friend, it's trying it. None of it is actually related to retail. It is the act of interaction. And so obviously that was vastly different types of experiences, than what just a standard, I'm in a store retail looking at a box and reading it, right? And I'd say the last one was because COVID, everyone was moving online, and we saw a gap in the market for more immersive experiences related to events. And so, I'd say all of that kind of culminated into me realizing like maybe we weren't focused on the right problem, and enabled us to pivot more towards a solution that would actually have an application, I would say, in the market back in 2020.
Hmm. No, it makes sense. And, I think it's one where a lot of factors go into it, and as to whether or not the timing's right, whether or not the technology's right, the people willing to accept it, and then that. So you kind of go through that exercise and say, okay, time, or for whatever reason the business isn't going to work out, or isn't going to take off in the direction you're hoping for. So now you're kind of figuring out, okay, what's next, or where are you going to head, or what are you going to do after that? Kind of where did you land on, or kind of how did you decide where to go from there?
Yeah, so we ended up landing on events originally. There was look, everyone was doing events, and Zoom is Zoom. Uh, it's beneficial until you have four people or more in the room, right? And so, we realized that the application we were building, because again, it was multiplayer, so you could do it with other people. It was fully social, using voice or text chat. And so we kind of realized that that was something that was directly applicable for online events at the moment, where you were stuck to one conversation at once. We were able to support up to, at the time it was 25 conversations at once. Now it's about 50 conversations at once, and more. So obviously that's fantastic. And so we ended up going towards events. We ran stuff for Independence Blue Cross, Temple University, University of Pennsylvania, as well as a few marketing agencies and different groups. I think 2021 we did 51 events, just short of one a week, which I'm really proud of. And so that was an amazing experience. But I'd say that really from there, it wasn't done learning. Like the problem that I originally faced when I built the VR shopping platform, of there was nothing that let me do it as a non-coder, was directly applicable still for events. And the reason I say that is when it comes to the event venue, right, the environment, that was being created by professional designers and developers using high-end software, game engines, something that someone like me, just you can't do it in 10 minutes, like you would with Canva or Wix or Bubble. And that kept hitting me, and it kind of just got to a point where we were having kind of too many going on, and my development team was not building new features or infrastructure and tooling, but they were rather customizing environments, like uploading images and videos. And then I'd go back and be like, hey, the client wants to move it, can you slightly this way, can you do that? And it kind of got to a point where I was like, honestly, I do this online already. Like, I can upload an image, I can move it into a place. Like, can you just build me a tool that lets me do that so that you don't have to do it? Like, I can figure that out. And so we ended up building out a very early version one, like a proof of concept, I guess, of the ability for a slot system, somewhere that I could go and customize or brand an environment leveraging 2D media originally. And I'd say over time since then, we got really good responses with that. And I've always wanted to do more. And so using myself as the user, and as well as all of the other creators that we're now empowering and have empowered the past couple of years, almost 900 to date. So I'm really, really happy about that. Like, it's just everyone wants to do more with less, right? Less time, less resources, less skills that you would need in order to do some of these things that are pretty redundant compared to other things we're already doing, or just in general of, you're recreating the wheel every time you do this. And so since that moment, we've definitely more so focused our energy a lot on solving that core problem, which is why is it so difficult to create. And so everything that we're kind of focused on to, like, at this point, is solely to solve that one issue, whether that's for professionals that might know how to use the software, but it's still a process to create multiplayer experiences and deploy it, as well as for non-coders like myself who say, I just really want to try, I want to create something. Can I hop in and do this pretty, like, relatively fast, right? And so that's kind of where we've been leaning for the past, I guess it's 2 years now.
Now you've done that over the period of 2 years, and makes sense. To your point, there isn't a lot of tools out there. If people want to create these type of events, it's either you create it from scratch or you use fairly expensive software, and then you still have to have a team or people to do that. And so you're trying to fill in that gap. So now as you've taken that over the last 2 years, how has the business grown? Is it one where it's taken off like a rocket ship and money rains down from the skies, teetering on the verge of bankruptcy, never knowing where the next paycheck's coming from, somewhere in the middle? Or kind of walk us through how that business has evolved over the last 2 years and kind of where it's at today?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the day. In the sense that, like, life's a roller coaster, like there are great days, bad days. I'd say, um, to touch on just one piece of advice that I've always gotten that's gotten me through, and then I'll go back to what you were saying of, like one of our key advisors. He's basically always said to me that the one that wins is the one who has gotten through the most moments of wanting to quit. And so, obviously, like, that hits me really hard in the sense of just every time you get to a point of like, man, like, why am I doing this? It's hard. Whatever that bad day is for you, you know, you just have to remember anyone else that you're competing against, and everyone's gotten to that same situation at some point, whether that's before you or after you. Those that still exist got through it. Those that don't exist failed and quit right there, because it was too difficult. They didn't love it enough, passionate, whatever it is. So I'd say like that's definitely the driver. I'd say on our end, when it comes to uh, our growth, I would say that in terms of growth, I've certainly been more focused on learning than I have been on the money side. That there's pros and cons to that, of course. I think the pros of it is that I've gotten advice and guidance, and I've had people try it that are at the biggest companies out there, Google, Nvidia, Apple. I mean, the ones that we look at and we're like, they're the ones driving forward technological innovation. And I've been able to see from them and their perspective of what's missing, what, when it comes to the problem we're solving, like, are we deep enough? Is the problem really at the core? How's our solution with solving this versus what it could be or should be, right? And so the past 2 years has really just been trial and error. I mean, it's a in this space has certain defined use cases at the moment. And it's again the reason I believe there's not much experimentation happening with other use cases that could potentially have value, but we don't know yet, is because it's not easy. It's not quick and cheap enough to actually rapidly prototype these things. It is a time consuming and somewhat costly endeavor. And for most teams, they're not going to throw that at something that isn't a sure win, right? And I think that's kind of what really has come to hit us home. And so we've been testing various use cases. We've seen people attempt and experiment with different avenues of business, ways to generate money, ways to bring your team together, to train and educate people, whether that's a student or your employees, visualize the world, 3D environments of literally the entire globe, right? Like, how do I create something that looks identical to real life? And so I think that those are kind of the problems we've been looking at and just trying to wrap our heads around, well, what does a solution like that look like? And I am proud to say that we are officially launching our beta on Friday. And that's kind of been a culmination of all of the learnings and trials and failures and successes that we've had over the course of the past 2 years since really diving into this path. So yeah, I'm excited on that end. On the money side, I'm not here. That's not me saying that there isn't money in it. Like, I would say we've done a substantial amount of revenue to date, like over 6 figures. And a majority of that was related to custom development, honestly. And that was another thing that kind of came to my mind was we've got, investors barking at us and advisors barking at us saying, recurring revenue is way better than a one-time payment, and then you don't know if you're going to see that customer again, right? And so we pivoted a lot of our functions away from that. And again, I think it just brings to light two things on that. Number one was it just hit me one day of, well, if we're doing this well with this, one day will there be a tool that replaces the need to hire our team to do custom development? And I realized the answer to that was a yes. And so part of me was like, well, if that's the case, why don't we just build that ourselves instead of letting someone else disrupt us, right? And then I'd say the second part of that was just recognizing that there are some incredible teams out there that are actively doing designs and architecture and development for brands already for experiences like this. And so, they've been disregarded to a large extent because platforms have high agency fees. I mean, the fee structure in general, Meta's Horizon World's 52% and you don't own your content. You've got Fortnite, which is 95% from my understanding in terms of fees, Roblox 70%, so like for the creators out there, how do they actually make money in this space? And we realized that even if we were to stop, that there's a huge opportunity to partner with a lot of them and help. We can still help brands by connecting them with the right people to build, right? And provide them a tool and infrastructure that would let them do more with less and actually bring home more than they would on other platforms and do it their way. No
Awesome.
restriction.
Definitely sounds like you guys have found a great place to be in the marketplace, opportunity to grow, and lots of exciting times yet ahead. So that's great to hear. So with that, now we've kind of caught up to the present day of the journey. Always a great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What did you learn from it?
The worst decision was, in hindsight's 2020, right? I'd say there's kind of 2 points I'd like to make on it after I say it. Like, the worst was building the VR shopping platform without validating it. But it was also the best. Again, it's a very because in one sense it was the worst decision because I spent a lot of time and money doing something that ultimately wasn't going to work. And so, if I was to have validated, I would have recognized pretty early that that was not the area to focus on and could have potentially built a solution that actually had more value earlier. Um, Given that that's the case, if I didn't do it, I would never have recognized firsthand how hard it is to do this. And so, in itself, like I only understand the problem we're solving because I faced it. So I'd say, but from a pure business standpoint, that was certainly not the right move. I definitely recommend validate, test your market, talk to customers as much as you can, prototype it however you can before actually building it. I don't think I could stress that enough. Um, but it did have value. Long term, that wrong decision had a lot of value for us.
No, makes perfect sense. Sounds like a good mistake to make or at least a good one to learn from. So, second question now that I like to ask is: so now if we're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I mean, that would be the first one. Definitely like don't build until you validate, honestly. No question. What else? What other advice? I mean, cash flow positive is king. Period. Um, do something you really care about. Like, what are you passionate about? What problems do you face that you really want to solve? Like, that would be the last piece I'd say, is because I've seen a lot of people try building other companies. And I'm not here to say that what I'm building is going to work, going to succeed. I mean, time tells. I firmly believe that we will. But, obviously, again, you can't predict the future. And so what I'd say is that the thing that gets me out of bed and why I don't feel like I'm working is because I truly love what I do every single day, because it's all in an effort to solve a problem that I care about. And a lot of other founders I meet in our space, other spaces aren't the same way. They're doing it for money. And again, I'm not here to say that is a wrong move if there's a great business opportunity to make money. Again, cash is king. But what I'd say is that you have a lot more trouble getting through the hard days if you don't really love what you do. And so that would just be my note of if you want to be happy, and you want to enjoy your day, that you like what you do. I think being passionate about it is more important than anything else. My father always said that if you chase money, you'll never get it. But if you create value for others, value comes back to you. And so I definitely live my life by that ethos of just recognizing that, you know, I don't, the money will, if you love something, someone else probably loves it too. You're not the only one in the world that likes something. And so I'd say there's always an opportunity, and to just follow what your gut's telling you.
No, I think that's a great piece of advice and some great takeaways. So, well, with that, now as we do wrap towards the end of the episode, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a fun, it's been a pleasure. Now,
Thank
for
you.
all of you that are, or if now people want to reach out to you, I was going to jump into a bit or wrapping it up. But before we do, if people want to reach out to you, if they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yep. So I mean, I would say go if you want to start building, go to our website. It's free to start. Anybody can try. So agoraworld.io. Highly recommend going and trying. Again, beta launches this upcoming weekend, and then by this weekend I mean December 8th weekend. I don't know when this is releasing, so I want to say that. And then the best way to reach out to me personally is LinkedIn for sure. You literally just search Ethan Berg, Agora World on LinkedIn. You'll find me. Would love to chat, hear about your ideas, anything I can do to help. I'm here to support. I just want to see more. I want to see greater connections being made between people across the entire world. So anything I can do to help promote that, I'm all for.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, and support a great company, and nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again, Ethan, for coming on the podcast. It's been a fun, it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. Now, on that note, if you ever need help along your journey with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Ethan, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you.